I think everybody can relate to this. When you have been holding on to unforgiveness for a while and then you eventually have the courage to let it go and trust that God can actually fight for you and God will actually vindicate you if you've been innocent and you have been wronged and you choose not to take on the responsibility to punish the person. That feeling of relief, that feeling of immediate emotional freedom, like, something in you just feels like the burden is off. And that really helps. It helps to improve your relationships as well because you let go of negative emotions and you become better at fostering compassion. And that is traveling light. It's letting go of that stuff, the stuff on you that is going to keep you way down anyway and blocks the glory that the Lord is sending your way. Hello everybody, welcome back to Travel Light. It's your friend Dr. Unoma. Hope you guys are doing well. It's so nice to have you back on. And to my new friends, let me introduce myself. I am Unoma, as I said. I am a psychiatrist. I am based in sunny Glasgow, Scotland. And more importantly, guys, I am a child of God. I'm a lover of Jesus. And I'm so convinced that he loves us so deeply, and that love, that care extends to our hearts, to our emotions, to our minds. So here at Travel Light, we're exploring what it looks like to give access to the Lord in that space, guys. You know, at church, I don't think we're very good at talking about this topic, but here we are, here at Travel Light, on a quest to live the abundant life freely and lightly. Guys, if this is your first time back or ever on Travel Light, and if you haven't yet actually, please hit that subscribe button, like right now. Like, I'm watching you, my eyes are on you. So hit that button, guys. It just means every time I have new content out, you're the first to know and you never miss out on the conversation. Also, guys, if you know anybody who would enjoy the topics that we talk about here, please go ahead and share the video. There might be somebody you know that is going through it and wants to know how they can travel lighter. Go ahead and share. You have my full permission. And again, if you love the content, go ahead and like the video as well. It helps with the algorithm and things like that. So let's go. So we are nearing the end of our chat about stress. It's been quite a few episodes. I think it's been really great actually breaking them down or breaking the topics down into their individual episodes and really going to the depths of them. Really cool. And I've been really enjoying the feedback I've been getting from you. Thank you so much for everyone who said that they found this series helpful. In the last episode, we discussed the power of prayer and meditation in managing stress. Again, I've spoken in the last episode that prayer is obviously important and is one of the bedrocks of our faith and hallmarks of our worship and things like that. But when it comes to meditation, I think there's some misconception about it and what it means, particularly from a biblical perspective. But I hope we have picked some things up and actually learned that it's actually a really, really cool way of connecting with the Lord when it's done the Lord's way. So I wondered, have you made any changes to your prayer life? Has anything changed there? Have you been more intentional about making your life a prayer, especially with the stuff you're going through? It's okay. Tell him every detail of your life. It is cool. You're going to get through it. Alrighty, so today we're going to focus on a different topic, obviously. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, and we're going to talk about how forgiveness can play a role in helping us to manage stress better. Yeah? So this is one of those topics. I think, first of all, on the outset, can I just say everything I'm going to say today, I am saying to myself. As I was preparing for this, I was like, man, I cannot be a hypocrite because a few people come to mind and I was like, okay, I really need to sort that out because that's not working. That's not going to work at all. So we know forgiveness in Christianity is major. Not only because, factually, because he loved us even before we knew him, forgave us even before we knew him. So he's so lavish in the way that he lets go of wrongdoings. He says that as far as the east is from the west, that's how far, I think about your wrongdoings and iniquities and transgressions. Like, he is so forgiving. He's so forbearing. He's so patient. He's so long suffering. So the core of our faith really is forgiveness. And in the way that we have received that forgiveness so easily, and not without a cost. It cost God himself coming down to earth and giving himself up for the sake of us. So it didn't come at no price. But in the same way we have received it so freely, the Lord expects that we also let that forgiveness go, or let it out, or release it to the people that are especially not deserving of it, because that was us at one point. So forgiveness in the faith means letting go of resentment, letting go of anger, and letting go of the desire for revenge against someone who has wronged you. It's about pardoning the offender, even when they don't ask for mercy and even if they don't deserve it. And as I say, guys, I'm preaching to myself today. The truth of the matter is, when we forgive, when we are holding somebody else in judgment, very often there is a reasonable excuse for it, but that reasonable excuse will destroy you because you're holding on to poison. So it's not only a core tenet of our Christian faith, but it is really crucial for spiritual well-being, psychological well-being, and our bodily well-being. And the truth of the matter, man, is sometimes it is hard, especially when all you want is a sorry. All you want is an acknowledgement of the wrong that's been done to you. And a lot of times, guys, you're just not going to get it. So what do we do when we don't get a sorry? Do we just stay in judgment? Because when we judge the other, we all hold ourselves in judgment as well. So forgiveness can be difficult, but it is necessary in order for us to thrive. So this is something that I think people have become much more aware of. And what I mean something, it's the impact of unforgiveness and resentment on, your body in general. And we're going to talk about how those things, or how unforgiveness can affect stress and really cause you emotional turmoil. But holding on to grudges and resentment really does impact your body. Now, when you are in unforgiveness, the truth of the matter is that you are in a heightened state of alertness, especially when the person is around you. I think we all know what that feels like. You see that person and that you get that like flip-flop feeling in your tummy, or your heart does like a little, you're like, you have to keep yourself together. So that's you going into fight or flight response. So if you are in that constant state of unforgiveness, that's probably what's happening. And you know how, stress is good in the short term, helps you get through whatever issue you're going through at the time, or whatever challenge is that you're trying to solve, and then or crisis you're trying to manage. But when it's ongoing for a long time, then those stress hormones, which are a blessing, then become a curse. So the cortisol gets elevated, your body doesn't do well over time. And we've mentioned multiple times now, and I hope I'm drumming it in, cortisol levels that are high over a long time can cause you to gain weight, have digestive problems, and have high blood pressure. And that's just a few of them. Other things that chronic stress from unforgiveness can cause is it can be linked with heart disease. I mentioned high blood pressure and other cardiovascular problems. It can lead to your immune system being suppressed. So remember in the episode on the biology of stress, I spoke about how that can happen. Yeah. So ongoing stress will weaken your immune system and probably make you more vulnerable to infections and diseases. Also, digestive issues. This is something that I myself have experienced. When you're holding on to grudges and then you start having some issues with your bowel motions and things like that. Also, ulcers are a common one, I should say. Let's talk about your mental health. Unforgiveness can really make feelings of anxiety and depression worse. And that's often because we start ruminating on the ways the person has wronged us, how they have not said sorry, and how if they can just do that one thing, it would change the situation. But in ruminating, what we're doing is that we're perpetuating that horrible cycle, and also those unpleasant emotions just stay there. It just makes life just difficult. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, when you are upset with somebody or someone's really, really, really hurt you and offended you, and you're really holding them in judgment. Those negative emotions stay, and you're having difficulty with sleeping, so insomnia. And when you aren't sleeping well, that really, really affects your body physically and also your mental health as well. When we hold on to anger and resentment, it keeps you trapped in negative emotional states, and that can lead to you having real chronic feelings of unhappiness, bitterness, and dissatisfaction. And over time, when you're holding on to this thing that you're not meant to hold on to, because it takes effort to stay in unforgiveness, it's really taxing. It then diminishes your ability to cope with everyday stressors, and even minor challenges that you're faced with become challenging and feel overwhelming. Another one is when you have unresolved grudges, it can lead to ongoing conflicts. So not only with the person that you're involved with, is it people's friends, mutual friends, you get strained relationships, and that can further heighten stress levels and the emotional burden of unforgiveness. Like, I remember there are times when I've been like, I just don't want to be around that person at all. So I'm not going to like annoy everybody else. I'm going to take my issue to my house. But the knock-on effects of that is I become isolated, right? And I'm losing out on community because I'm choosing not to confront whatever issue is I really should. So, guys, there is no upside to this. Also, when you're in forgiveness, you might find that your cognitive functions such as attention, memory, and decision-making become impaired. And again, I've spoken to you already about how grudges will reinforce some negative thinking patterns, and it can then make you just have a really negative outlook on life. And once again, that makes it even harder to manage stress, because when you are dealing with anything that is remotely challenging, it just feels bigger. So your appraisal of a situation is somewhat distorted. Now, the Bible is very clear that forgiveness is not negotiable. All these non-negotiables. Anyway, Ephesians 4:31 says, "And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice." Yeah. I think everybody can relate to this. You know, when you have been holding on to unforgiveness for a while, and then you eventually have the courage to let it go and trust that God can actually fight for you, and God will actually vindicate you if you've been innocent and you have been wronged, and you choose not to take on the responsibility to punish the person. That feeling of relief, that feeling of immediate emotional freedom, like, something in you just feels like the burden is off. And that really helps. It helps to improve your relationships as well, because you let go of negative emotions and you become better at fostering compassion. And that is traveling light. It's letting go of that stuff, the stuff on you that is going to keep you way down anyway, and blocks the glory that the Lord is sending your way. It's pointless. And then saying the stuff out, I'm like, why do I even bother holding people in judgment? It really is pointless. In Matthew 6:14-15, it says, "But if you withhold forgiveness from others, your Father withholds forgiveness from you. And when you pray, make sure you forgive the faults of others, so that your Father in heaven will also forgive you." So now we know that Christ has forgiven us, but there is something about when you hold, and I'm sure this is explained biblically, and when you hold somebody in judgment, you then condemn yourself. It's difficult also because you're sinning, and it becomes difficult for you to be at peace in the presence of the Lord. I remember listening to one of my favorite teachers. Her name is Nancy Cohen. If you haven't heard of her, she's wonderful. And she talks about how, people often wonder, when it comes to my relationship with God, I'm struggling with intimacy. I'm finding that there's a roadblock and I'm not able to progress in God, what is happening? And one thing that God has taught her is when you're in unforgiveness, it really does affect your intimacy with God, and you're probably not going to progress that part. So you need to deal with that and enjoy that grace again. Because it's not that God doesn't want to give you himself. It's just you stop yourself from enjoying him because as I say, as you know, as a lot of people say, when you point a finger at a person, there's at least 3 pointing back at you. So the judgment is just reinforced in you, which is just such a shame. But how do we practice forgiveness, especially when we are thinking about managing stress? Because it's interesting when you're dealing with a stressful situation. You have life doing what it does, and a lot of times we're trying to keep our head above water. We're sometimes feeling overwhelmed, but then inside your heart there's a stone. It's like something is so heavy, and then the strength to stand up, that necessary resilience to cope with that external stuff, it's just harder, so it's important that we practice forgiveness in our daily life. So first of all, guys, if you've been hurt, acknowledge that you've been hurt. Like so many times that I have minimized whatever has been done to me, because in a way, I know I've judged myself for even feeling offended by something, because in my head I should be above that. But the truth is my heart feels it. And even if I don't acknowledge it, it's still there. So I need to acknowledge, actually, I've been hurt. I need to not judge myself for it. And I need to also evaluate how that action or word or gossip or whatever it is has impacted my life. Yeah. Remember that Jesus, even in the face of great suffering, is saying, "Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they do." It's very interesting. I was reading this book by Brene Brown. I can't remember what one it was, because I've read quite a few of her books, but she's talking about how, she was at one point seeing a therapist, and I don't want to butcher the story, but the moral of it was her therapist said to her, "Everybody is doing the best they can." And Brene says how she struggled with that. Like, really? Everybody doing the best they can? She's like, yeah, everybody's doing the best they can. And I have to say, I've struggled with that. But if you believe that, everybody's doing the best they can, it's easier to extend compassion. It's easier to extend grace, because everybody's doing the best they can. And I wonder, when Jesus said that, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do," it's like they don't know any better. They're doing the best they can. So pray for the strength to forgive. That's a really important one. Any command God gives us, he will give you the grace to fulfill. So when God says forgive, he's not saying you in your corner without my assistance, without my voice, without my heart, without my strength, do that on your own. No, he's saying, just say yes to that, and we're going to together work it out. So pray for the strength to forgive, and also ask God for help in the process, because when we think about the aftermath of forgiveness, sometimes forgiveness looks like letting judgment go and stop having revenge fantasies. Revenge fantasies about the person. Or in other situations, it means you actively reconciling with the person and building on the relationship again. Like, so asking God what he's saying about the relationship is actually really important, so you know what your goal is. Make sense? Also, I think certainly when I've spoken to people much more mature than me, than I am as a believer, I've come to understand that forgiveness really is a walk. Sometimes, and depending on what situation it is that you need to let go of, it can be a process, and that's okay. As long as you've said yes to the Lord. When he's already said, you need to let this go, and it's yes. And the outworking may not be overnight, I'm thinking about people, for example, who have been through sexual abuse and sometimes for many years, letting go of that, because that kind of trauma brings such fragmentation to the soul. The lasting effects of that, it can be very difficult to let go in one night, essentially. Sometimes it can be, but sometimes the offense can be so grave that it takes a while. But our job is to say yes to the Lord and trust him that as we're following his guidance, that can be outworked. So the truth is, it will cost you your pride. Oh, it will also cost you your need to be right, which is something that I often struggle with. But in the end, you're free. And this is literally like in Matthew 11, the Lord saying, take my yoke, for it is easy, my burden because it's light. So we give him that unforgiveness that is weighing us all the way down, preventing us from thriving and making us see life much worse than it actually is. So we give him our heavy burden and he gives us his light one. So that's really what's going on here. So ask the Good Shepherd to help you. And I guess another one is, it's important to seek counsel if you're really struggling. Sometimes I know myself, there are times when I've had to share what was going on or what had happened to me, because part of my turmoil and part of the stress I was experiencing from said event was not knowing whether or not I was crazy for even feeling offended. I know, not trusting myself in things, but it's true. And sometimes speaking to somebody else, they're like, actually, that was bang out of order. That shouldn't have happened to you. And sometimes that is enough balm for healing and might give you enough strength and courage to do what you need to and let the other person go, because everybody's doing the best they can. So yeah, just thinking about even, some experiences of unforgiveness and just how that's helped with reducing stress in my life and embracing peace. Life is really relationships when it comes down to it. You can be best friends with Netflix, but you can't really, people matter. God cares about people and he wants us in relationship with them. But what will come with that will be these kind of situations where, because we're not all from the same background, because we don't have the same values or experiences and backgrounds or families or whatever, that there will be these kinds of offenses that arise, And a surefire way for this to be tested is getting married. Marriage is beautiful, obviously, and it's part of God's design. And you get to do life with somebody who you trust and loves the Lord too, which is great. Oh my goodness, there will be some tense moments. And I remember, obviously, people who've been married longer will know this as well, or even married 2 weeks, I don't know. Somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but marriage really is, you say two forgivers living together or doing life together. And my goodness, isn't that true? Because some things are heavy to me and my husband. They're like, why'd you care? Like, why is that bothering you so much? But anyway, I was thinking about a recent experience where, we had a disagreement and there's a lot of tension in the house. And oh my gosh, as I mentioned in my episode about peace and things, I've become less tolerant maybe of that stress from relational conflict. Whereas before I would have been much more determined that my point will be proven. Now I've come to understand better that our default mode as believers is peace. So when that's upset, I can't function well, even if I pretend that I am, right? So anyway, whoever disagreement was, I can't remember what it was because, it happens. Probably the cutlery or like dishes or something, because that's a big one. Anyway, but we talked to whatever that thing was through, and yeah, and then the tension just released. But what I was going to highlight was after that, like literally symptoms in my body, like not to sound crude, but going to the toilet, just it just became easier. So with all that tension and with all that pressure, all that like resentment, my body was responding as well. So your body actually keeps a score, which is why it's important that we let go of the stuff that is just getting in the way of our abundant life. And that's our spirit, our souls, and our body, guys. And if you've been a Christian, like I have been for pretty much of my life, or been involved in leading things, or been involved in managing people, ha 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 ha. Church will try you, guys. Church is real low. But guys, it's not a reason to stop meeting with the brethren. Like, it's just things get messy, and family is messy. But in this family, like sometimes the parents don't speak up when they should, or it's just interesting, you know? And I've had real battles and real challenges. A couple years ago, I remember, again, as a leader, this is something that you will experience. One of the aunties, it's always an auntie or something like that. Anyway, one auntie said something and blah, blah, blah. And I was really offended, really, really offended. But at this point, I'd begun to understand that God was interested, or is interested, in my life. I wants to know what I'm thinking and cares about even the little things. But I was just praying about it. I was like, man, I feel like this. So I wanted his perspective, and I just caught a quick vision, and it was just him. You know, he was kind of up, almost like in the sky. And then he says, come up here with me. And at that moment, I understood, like, in the midst of that hurt, I was regressing. He's like, rise above it with me. It's not important. And then shortly after that as well, said auntie pops in my dream to apologize. Never happened in real life. But I was like, I want an apology. It's so silly. But actually, you know, I should have just taken that. Like, actually, God was showing me that in reality, in her heart, she was apologetic, but culture and things, she probably didn't feel comfortable enough to come and apologize to me. So yeah, that happens. If we speak our heart out to the Lord, he will give us his perspective on things, and yeah, it can get better. So, to summarize, I didn't know I went to there. Forgiveness is massive, and the truth of the matter is, when we are in unforgiveness, it compounds the stress that we're already going through. It makes it difficult. It makes our ability to be adaptive and resilient even difficult, because our resources are being depleted by said unforgiveness. And as somebody said before, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die from it. It hurts you. It's not great for you. So let's get into the practice of living life daily in forgiveness. And again, I am speaking to myself. As I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, there were a few things that I was thinking, like, I really need to sort this stuff out. And I will. And I hope you guys do too as well. So to close things off, it's just a really short scripture, Luke 6:37. And it says, forgive and you will be forgiven. Simple as. So guys, thank you so much for joining in again. You guys are amazing. The next episode, we're going to be, again, we're coming to the end of this stress series, and we're going to be talking about, I'll leave it as a surprise. It's going to be one of it's a fun topic. I think it's one of the things we don't talk about enough in this digital age, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So thanks again for joining in. So leave a comment for us. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that right now. But till then, guys, continue to travel light. I'll see you soon. Bye.